Welcome to another episode of What the Schuck, as we're talking football with the czar of high school sports, KHQA Sports Director, Christopher Duerr. Does anybody call you Christopher?
My mother, when she's still angry at me to this very day. I still get that.
I actually had, and I wish I could remember which high school student athlete it was, asked me if anybody calls me Matthew. Because normally they rarely hear anybody call me Matt.
It's always Schuck.
It's always Schuck. Yeah. So I did have somebody ask me if anybody called me Matthew, and I'm like, just my mom.
I get Christopher David Duerr, what are you doing to this very day? And it still sends shivers down my spine.
Okay, I know we're getting ready to jump into talking about week 3 of high school football and the burgeoning college football scene and all that.
Yes, sir.
But before that,
okay,
you, sir, get your choice.
Okay.
One meal.
Okay.
Chef's table.
Okay.
So you're in the kitchen.
Sure.
Which Food Network star are you picking to cook your meal, and what would you like them to cook for you?
I would let Antonio LaFaso cook anything she wanted for me. She is wonderful, and I'm sure the ambiance would be wonderful as well.
I'm sure it would.
Yes.
I like that. That's a good call.
She's tops with me.
Okay.
But I am very into the new Alex Gornishelli show on Sunday nights, and I know you and I kind of get our escape from sports through the Food Network. That's a really good show.
It is. I was a little surprised. I didn't know how it would be, but I agree with you. Alex versus America?
Yes, Alex versus America.
Yes, very much so. Now, you surprised me, though. I know we have had the conversation about Antonio LaFaso and other Food Network chefs.
Sure.
But I figured for sure you'd go Brooke Williamson.
I don't think Brooke Williamson's food is as good as Antonio LaFaso's. And, the Italian thing works for me with food at a very high level, and it just seems like her pastas are so amazing. I
knew you were going California chef, though.
I was, yes.
Sacktown boy.
Can't help myself. By the way, 117 yesterday. My mom and dad said it was the hottest day in the history of Sacramento. They don't leave the house right now.
I was saying, aren't you glad you're in the Midwest then?
I am super glad I'm in the Midwest right now.
By the way, I would go Michael Simon.
Michael Simon's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's a
because I think he would be fun to chat with while he's cooking and
he's a Cleveland guy, and apparently, A, his Cleveland restaurant is really, really good.
Yeah.
And B, I watched him do a show once about the Cleveland Farmers Market, which looks amazing. Like, you can get any food ever made of any world style at the Cleveland Market.
Do you like his Barbecue USA show?
I do, because it's really easy to get addicted because he's following different guys in competition. Correct. There's a very sporty element that feeds into what you and I love.
No question.
Yeah.
Which then, my second one is not a chef on Food Network, but I would love to go have some barbecue at the Shed.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Now you're talking. But, it's hard for me to turn down barbecue of any ilk, style, or variety, my friend.
True. Well, we've seen some barbecuing recently on both the high school and the college football front. And the fact that Aeneas Williams barbecued the Jeff City defense last week for a record-setting 8 touchdowns and all 53 points for the Pirates. I mean, he did it all. It was crazy. Now, granted, they had some really good blocking. And the thing I'm kind of trying to address this week as I'm working on preview stuff is the quality of the offensive lines we have in the area.
Oh, we have some good ones, yes.
And so a lot of talk has been about Aeneas and all that, but I think the pieces around him are the reason he was able to get so many of those touchdowns.
And he'd be the first to tell you that.
Yes.
I thought it was interesting. I know you saw the picture with him and Ezekiel Elliott, and it was nice to see Ezekiel Elliott get to engage in some fan worship with the best running back who was in the building that night, Aeneas Williams. So, but yeah, I mean, you're right. That offensive line is very good and vastly improving and vastly better than they were a week ago against Elias. And as you well know, as somebody who was a practitioner lineman, I did it for years and years. Offensive line is all about continuity. More so than the individual pieces, it's how you all work together. And the more chemistry a line has, the better it tends to play, which is why veteran lines are so good. Not because the individual pieces may all be of the level of, say, a Devin Rue, a Bowling Green, but because the pieces fit together so well. So, yeah, I think we do have some really high-caliber offensive lines. Camp Point Central, I know, is among that list for you because I know that's a team that you've talked an awful lot about.
Right.
For me, a lot of that is, hey, we've seen some of that with Macon this year with how good they've been to this point. Obviously with Bowling Green, and they're just a world above everybody right now in Tri-State.
They're impressive.
They are. And to me, it was a little bit of seeing that with Clark County last week.
Okay.
That they took the bite and that suddenly, Clint Shamley, you can't miss him at 6'5", 305 pounds.
Right.
But the pieces around him work so well. And I think you and I have had this conversation about Clark County as a team on the come. We're going to find out how good they are at Macon coming up on Friday night.
No question about it. And come back to this side of the river, I was really impressed on Friday night against Alton with Quincy High School's line.
Yes.
I thought they were good against Quincy Notre Dame. I thought they were elite against Alton. Now, Alton's bad. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Alton's not a very good team. But they got bullied. They got bullied by the Blue Devils. That doesn't happen a whole lot at Flynn Stadium traditionally.
There's some mean streak to that line. And I know some of it emanates from Chris Flax because that's the way he likes to play.
Right.
And that sets a tone. And you don't go out to practice without seeing him just destroying people. I mean, there's no pullback from him.
Yes.
And that sets a really nice tone. I thought Quincy High, based on going back, you got to see it in real time. I had to go back and parse video as we do after the fact. But there was a lot impressive there. And when you figure Aiden Byquist is out of the equation and the way those receivers played, whether it was Tykel, whether it was Johannesson, I can never pronounce
Caden Johannesson.
Johannesson, yes. Without seeing it in front of me, Caden Johannesson had a really nice game as well. Those receivers are really good.
I was impressed by Tykel Hammers because he's the guy that's kind of got to slide into a spot now. And he did. He slid right in, made plays on both sides of the ball. And I think that's the thing is Quincy High, when one guy goes down, they're able to slide somebody in. But I really thought that they went out with the mentality of they're going to flat back Alton, and that's just the way it is. And they bullied them. They truly bullied them.
Yeah.
The other offensive line who I think has been bullying some people already is Macomb.
Yeah, and that starts a lot of that with Ethan Ladd, who we did the feature on this week, and his work ethic. And I thought it was really cool because, after you post the story and you see the comments, I thought it was really cool today to go back and see so many people saying, Ethan Ladd has a lot of young kids who look up to him because of what he's done. And you totally change your body type the way he has and become the kind of football. That's a really good example for kids. And on top of everything else, Ethan Ladd may be a tough guy, but he's a good dude. He was raised right. His dad's a wrestling coach. It's yes or no, sir. And it's all shucks. And it's, it's all the things that fit in that kind of having that vibe and that kind of discipline in your house say, hey, there's still a lot of that's still alive and at play in our society.
And what's really cool about him is I haven't had the chance to write about him yet. But I'm going to, at some point in football, I could do it, or wrestling. I could, he's going to get a story on muddyriversports.com at some point. But there's some time to get it done. The other intriguing team that I'm real anxious to see when they, down the road is Monroe City.
Yeah.
They tied for first in the Class 1 state poll this week. There's a lot of pieces there, but we keep talking about linemen. Their line seems to be pretty solid so far.
Their defensive line especially, because we all knew that was all back. And, obviously Keaton Penawell gets the ink he does, deservedly so, nothing away from him.
Right.
But he gets a lot of clean hits on people, which amplifies what he does. And I will be in Highland this week. That's my goal on Friday night to see Monroe City for the first time. Nearly made that trip this week, but I thought, I'll go all the way down to Montgomery County and I might not get anything. Well, if I would have gotten a Waylon DeGray pick 6 and 2 fantastic Keaton Penawell touchdowns, and I'd have been out. So Murphy's Law on that front. But, I'm really interested to see how the top end of this Clarence Cannon Conference race, shakes out, because there's a lot of good teams. And you look at what Centralia did to Hallsville, rallying back from 12-0 down and finding a way to win that game.
Yep.
That's a really good Hallsville team. So Centralia, Macon, Monroe City, Clark on the rise.
South Shelby's going to knock somebody off.
That is the one team, and I asked somebody today who got a chance to see South Shelby play, hey, are they of that ilk? And I got, they're of that ilk.
I don't know if they can win the league, but they're going to knock somebody off in some way, shape, or form and make themselves a contender when it comes to districts. Not only do they have Trey Countryman, but they got pieces around him. And the kid who's already committed to play baseball at John Wood and PJ Schmidt is a really good offensive weapon for Countryman to rely on.
Well, and they all play off of Cam Wiseman to some degree.
Yep.
But the thing that nobody realizes, because we're all dazzled by the passing game and all of that, but Kendall Hammond has been a 200-yard rusher the first 2 games out of the
how about
gate.
that?
And that gives them the hammer to throw behind a pretty good line.
Right.
You know, and I think we all knew that Adam Gunderman, from all that time he spent with Kevin Miles and, you know, going back to his P. Hill days, I can still remember the P. Hill days, you know, he's a really good coach in a lot of phases of the game.
No question about it.
So I think we get real interesting because we also saw, if you start thinking ahead to the district, when you're looking at what really counts, Mark Twain bounced back so big last week with Lakota Preston back, with some of the swerve back in their offense that sets up an Austin Shepard out of the backfield. Their defense is really good. Connor Eckler looks like that guy, the quarterback who maybe comes from off radar and gets into the conversation at the end of the year of 10 best quarterbacks in the area.
They just had the unfortunate circumstance of opening the season against Monroe City.
And they got to figure that out, though.
And they do.
That is a very sound warning to Coach Epperson and that group. Okay, we know what the line of demarcation is for us. We got to get over the Monroe City flu, and that's what it is at this point.
The obviously there's a lot going on in the high school scene. We saw a great game last week on the soccer pitch between Quincy High and Quincy Notre Dame. One of the best goals I think either one of us has ever seen. With the way Tanner Anderson won that game on the delivery from Brock Evans. But I think and the volleyball scene got real interesting over the weekend with Unity winning the Lady Sons Classic.
Did you see that coming?
I did not.
I did not either.
I was there when Unity played Q&D in the season opener. I thought this is a solid team. We'll see how they fare coming down the road. And then they just continue to get better.
I would have.
They do have weapons.
And that's without question. Having seen them against Q&D, bouncing back and seeing them in that epic battle on Tuesday night with Camp Point Central, where they didn't look like they were very into it. Having talked to Seth Klusmeyer, where he said, we had some things that we had to figure out. Apparently, they're one of those teams, and if you know anything about Kira Carruthers and kind of her fire and competitive fire, you know, it's when the lights got bright and you found out you're going up against Josie Bryan and you're going up against Amanda Stevens, that volition kicked in for her. And she's a young lady who you don't want to cross when that goes that direction.
Well, no, because she's got her dad in her.
Yeah, she does have her dad in her.
I mean, and
unlike her dad, she can jump.
I sure hope he hears that.
I hope he hears that too.
But Keith Carruthers, the basketball coach at Unity, the boys basketball coach at Unity, has that fire. He has that intensity. He can rub you wrong because he wants to win and he wants to get after it. But what a great guy to have teach your kids that, to teach your kids how to be competitive, how to compete, how to fight for it.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's, you know, and you know, I remember talking to the late, great Rich Meyer about, you know, Kira's going to be really good. She's got to figure out how to control it, not let it control her. And clearly, you know, when the stage got bright and you were hearing all about Josie Bryan and Amanda Stevens and all the great hitters, who was the best hitter at the end of that week? And you could have made an argument, Matt, based on the way Unity kind of played. You could have made an MVP argument for Ashlyn Arnsman. You could have made one for Kylie Berry.
Correct.
I mean, they both played really well.
That's the thing. And then you've got a Carolyn Knox who does a lot of other things really well. She might not be the hitter the rest of them are, but she does a lot of things on that back row really, really well. She's a great server. She's a good defensive specialist, digger, you know, serve receiver and all those type of things. Unity's got a lot of pieces there to be the team this year that could make a run.
To have that moment where we finally got, some clarity at the top end made me super excited for whenever the heck Macomb Q&D rolls around. I think that's the other evolution of area volleyball we all can't wait to see.
Well, I was out at Saturday at the pit to watch Notre Dame play Bloomington Central Catholic and Springfield Sacred Heart Griffin. And they just dominated. It's impressive the way Notre Dame goes about its business. And it's not just the hitting. You could sit there and talk about Emma Hoeing, Abby Schreck, Layla Hernandez-Jones. I mean, you go up and down the line with all the people that can hit on that team. But it's their ability to serve, attack off the serve. It's their ability to dig everything up with Faith Kinsel and Lily Marth. And
their serve receive is really, really hot.
Yes, it is.
Which is something that took me years and years to understand in this business. But once you're around Terry Paul and Rich Meyer, you begin to see it when they explain it to you.
Yeah.
So you can see the ability, not just the ability, but some of the athleticism at the back to be able to serve receive the way Q&D does.
Right.
I mean, we're not hearing about Emma Hoeing banging people off the cranium with her spikes if it's not for the girls in the back who are making that happen.
Because I think what often gets lost in the mix there is you see the set and the spike.
Right.
And what a great kill.
Because that's what we show you.
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. But it's how does the ball get from the dig to the setter to the hitter?
Right.
And it's not just getting the ball up off the floor the way the defensive specialist or the back row does on the serve receive. It is making sure you're getting the ball up, but getting in a spot where, and for Quincy Notre Dame's example, Annie Eaton can give a great set, and she does. And she's the chatter after the games on Saturday was she could develop into a Division I setter.
I think so, and we've seen plenty, and we've seen some come out of that program.
Correct.
Which, wouldn't surprise us. And this area has a long history of great setters. So,
yes.
And I think we're seeing another one in Caitlin Robinson at Macomb, who stepped into the shoes of the best setter in our area last year.
Right.
The girl that made Macomb an actual program that people cared about. And, Avery Rex wrote, and all of a sudden, she's really good. And if you watched her in softball, she's incredibly athletic.
Yeah, you tend to, it's kind of funny because you tend to pigeonhole some kids.
Right.
Because, Caitlin Robinson's such a good softball player.
She is. Phenomenal pitcher.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so all you think about is that she's a softball player.
Right.
And then you realize, oh, wow, she's really good at volleyball. There's no pigeonholing with a lot of these kids. The multi-sport athletes at so many of these schools are really impressive.
They are, and I think that's kind of the fun for us because we know that winning attitude carries over from season to season.
How much did you enjoy the college scene last weekend of seeing some kids from our area excel at the college level? Weston King got a sack for Central Missouri. Jack Marth had a tackle for a safety in Truman State's game. And then obviously Jyrell Brock with a 100-yard effort in his first regular season start for the Cyclones for Iowa State. With a play that continues to get his 23-yard run continues to get love on social media. It's going viral all over the place. How much did you enjoy seeing the progression of some of these student athletes?
I love it. I mean, that's what we live for because we don't get many exports. And when we do, they're usually the best of our kids, not just as athletes, but in the cases of kid like Jack Marth, Shamar Griffith. You start talking about
I forgot to mention
Corbin
Shamar
Arsenet, who led the nation D3 in tackles for loss last year, who had another one to start the season at Monmouth this week, albeit in a loss. I mean, I love seeing that. And that to me is so much part of the fun of this. And for Jack Marth coming off surgery, I didn't even know Jack Marth was going to play based on where he had been this summer. And if you had seen him and you see him now, the progress he made back in the weight room, getting himself back, is pretty amazing. It's really gratifying. I spent Duerrisms this week writing an epic poem about Jyrell's play and about how cool it is for this community for that to happen, and how we'll get that again probably with Aeneas in a couple of years. And just how it's nice that when one guy from our town rises, if they're a good person, everybody rises with them.
No question.
Goes along for the ride. And I thought you touched on that pretty eloquently in an amazing column that you wrote about Dennis Guthrie and his passing, that if you haven't seen it yet on Muddy River, you need to, because it reminds you that at heart, we're all sons.
No question about it. And it was, I got to know Dennis pretty well over the years. Developed a good relationship with him. Obviously, I have a relationship and a friendship with Luke Guthrie that is very special to me. And had the opportunity to talk to Luke after his dad's passing, and spent some time on the phone with him because obviously the whole family's in Florida these days. And the great part was it wasn't a conversation about grief. It was a conversation about celebrating his dad. And Dennis Guthrie and I, all he ever wanted was the best for his sons.
And they turned out pretty darn well, both of them.
They did. But even, that's all he ever wanted. And it wasn't, he didn't want them to be millionaires. He didn't want them to be, headliners. If they didn't get a headline, so what? It didn't, that stuff never bothered him. He wanted them to be good people and successful. And they both are.
And that's what makes this community so special, is that we all still value and care about that.
Yeah.
Whether you're off doing it on the PGA Tour or whether you're doing it at home in your community, making your community a little better. And that's always gratifying.
And I could go across the board when it comes to the golf parents who are like that.
Right.
But one of the ones right now I think of is Blake Arnold out at Liberty, whose parents remind me very much of the Guthries.
They do.
In the sense that they're there to support, they follow along, they're always there, but they don't ever cross that line and become, a golf dad that is annoying, or anything like that. It's all about doing it the right way.
We've been spoiled by a lot of great parents over the years,
and not just golf. I mean, across the board.
But you touched on that with golf. I've also had the good fortune to cover Macomb the last couple of years.
Yes.
With the Duncans and the Hams and the Watsons and everything that's gone on with those folks.
Right.
Just to see kids raised right is really, really cool.
Yeah, and so it's been a somewhat emotional ride the last few weeks, knowing that what the Guthries have gone through with Dennis's passing, but the outpouring of support I know they've received, and the people around here who have kind of banded together and talked about it and celebrated it, celebrated his life, has been really, really cool.
That's a very beautiful thing. But again, I think that's endemic of this community as much as anything, which is why so many of us make our homes here.
Yeah, some of us moved from Sacramento, and
God help those people,
and stay here forever.
Yeah, you can't get rid of me at this point, can you?
So what's on your agenda for the coming weekend? What are you most looking forward to?
So this is the best football Saturday, obviously, we're going to have. And, I get a chance to see Quincy Notre Dame on Saturday afternoon. Going to jet myself over to Macon and watch Bowling Green and St. Mary's. Okay. Zach's going to head down to Troy. That Troy Buchanan Hannibal game is going to be a ton because there are some dudes on both sides in that game.
No question about it.
Looking forward to that. I kind of did the thing this week, though, a little bit where I went, got to see a lot of volleyball last week. So this week, kind of my emphasis has been softball, cross country. Okay. I'll probably start my Saturday morning over at Palmyra with some cross country because we haven't ventured into Missouri yet.
Yeah.
Want to do some stuff with Bowling Green because, obviously Benjamin Chance is a very special runner. Okay. Mark Twain, Sam Northcutt is a very special runner. Okay. Haven't had a chance to see those guys yet. So I'm kind of playing catch up a little bit this week, but it's a good kind of catch up because, I feel like, you and I have both done a lot of soccer, a lot of golf right out of the gate because that starts earlier.
Correct.
Now we're kind of getting our volleyball.
Yeah, and like with cross country, they're just now kind of getting going.
I mean next Tuesday is the biggie at South Park, obviously.
Yes.
And all those guys that I mentioned and so many more who are trying to rise will be in that field.
Yeah, so
that's a spotlight event with the Running Raider next week.
And imagine how that thing has grown over the years.
It's such a good. I mean, I remember Andy Edgar kicking that around. Yeah. Like, you think you can sell cross country in a non-cross country town? We're a pretty good cross country town.
Yeah. Well, it helps that some of the area schools have been really good cross country schools.
They have. Yes, and you get that Liberty push. Yes.
Yeah.
So
awesome, man. Well, enjoy your weekend of everything. And it's first weekend of NFL. Do you get into the NFL?
Not at all. Actually, I don't. I have no NFL affiliations whatsoever. Because of the way the nature of my job is, if it's not the Sacramento Kings, generally pro sports wise, although I find myself watching a lot more baseball than I used to.
Okay.
And no team affiliation. That will change when Brandon Sproat finally signs somewhere, going back to Florida because he didn't like what happened with the Mets.
Understandable.
Between you and I, which, okay, I get it.
Yep.
So he'll have one more year, and then I'll be a lifelong fan of whatever team my first cousin once removed ends up pitching for. So who knows? I'm excited to see where that goes.
Your Sundays are made for pop duty.
They are, and that's basically all they become. And I don't have anything that gets in the way. I don't play fantasy football. I don't watch anything. I'm Banks' grandpa and pop that day, and that's enough for me.
That's a great way to spend a Sunday.
It's the best way to spend a Sunday.
Awesome. Well, enjoy that Sunday with Banks, and thanks for coming in today.
Always a pleasure, my friend. You going to come join me next Wednesday at my place?
You betcha.
I'll be coming off the back end of the Gold Boot next week, so we can talk a little bit about Seth Anderson.
Awesome.
Mitchell Murphy next week. We'll have some fun with that.
It will. That'll be great. Well, I will join you next week on KHQA. Thanks for hanging out and doing What the Schuck this week.
Always a pleasure, my man. A great interview with Justice Keene, by the way. Love that kid.
Thank you very much. For Chris Duerr, I'm Matt Schuckman. This has been What the Schuck. Catch us again next week.